Hello fellow painters, and welcome to another painting tutorial from Promethean Paints. Today we're going to be painting the awesome looking Chaos Dwarf Dominator Engine. So I've fully built the model and made the base separately away from the model, just so we can paint the base a bit differently with the airbrush. So the model's been made with, the base has been made with some cork and then some of the Liquitex gel, just to create a sort of lava type effect for the bottom. And then I've gone ahead and primed the model using AK Tenebrous Grey. Gives us a nice dark purplish type colour, bit different to black. So if you haven't got that, you could use Corvus Black, maybe even Nagaroth Night mixed with a little bit of Corvus Black, just to make a very, very dark purple. But if you could get some Tenebrous Grey, it's a really good colour, gives a sort of dusty type finish as well. Going to be doing a lot of dry brushing, so the first thing we're going to be doing is using the Citadel Iron Warriors and a largest dry brush. We're just going to be applying the Iron Warriors all over the model, generally following the shapes and contours of the model, trying to go in one direction, which is downwards. So the brightest part is going to be at the top and the dullest part, but we're just looking for a nice coverage of the Iron Warriors across the entire model, making sure we pretty much cover all of it in this colour. We'll be using some brass colours later for the trim, but most of the model is primed, is going to be base coated in this silver colour, and we'll be going over it with the brass colours. So these are the Artify Drybrushes. This is the size 11. Sorry, you can buy them in a pack, about 6 or 7 from Amazon. They're really nice dry brushes, short bristled, very soft, round, gives a really nice coverage. Doesn't tend to streak the paint or mark. Sometimes with a dry brush it can be too dry and leave horrible scratch marks. These actually feel like you're brushing the paint onto the model and only catching the raised areas. Okay, once we're done with the Iron Warriors, we just move on to the Citadel Stormhost Silver. Same method, same brush, just wipe off the excess of the other and put a fair amount of Stormhost Silver on, then wipe it off, and then usually now what we're doing is working from top to bottom, only catching the edges you want to be the brightest. So this gives you a nice transition from the dark Iron Warriors to the bright Stormhost Silver, and just apply this all over the model. Even the areas that you want to be bronze, still dry brush with these colours. We're basically dry brushing the entire miniature, apart from the sort of smoke areas, because then the brass effects will go paint nicely over these base coats of silver that we're doing. And you'll notice now that that Tenebrous Grey is giving us a really rich, deep, dark, dirty, dusty undertone to our silver colours. We're now going to apply our first wash and shade, so we're going to use some Citadel Druchii Violet and then watered down. So this is it's probably one brush of Druchii Violet to 5 drops of water. It's a very strong colour. Over dilute this, because you can always apply more than one cover of this wash and shade. As you can see, it's very, very thin, very subtle at first. And I'm trying to push the paint up into the top so that it's more purple at the top. Obviously gravity works against us. She's a cruel mistress, is gravity. So the paint will start flowing down, but because it's quite thin, you can apply more and more colours, layers over a smaller area. So I apply this over all the areas we want to be the sort of silver. I followed the box art, and this was mainly around the sort of shoulder pads, leg pads, that it's got that purple undertone to it, but you can apply it to any area of the model. There are some subtle variants within the kit with the chest armour and back armour, but the primary goal here is to the areas that are going to be staying silver armour, just give these a wash in Druchii Violet. You could of course use Nuln Oil or Agrax Earthshade or any dark wash, but the box art had that purple, and actually it adds a nice, just a different colour to the model, and instead of just silvers and bronzes all over the place, adds some nice depth to your model with these different colours. You could use greens or reds, blues, but the violet gives it a warmth and mystical type shading, so it's always worth playing around with them. But yeah, thin it down, which means you can apply multiple layers. If you put too much on straight out of the pot, it'll be way too purple, way too dark, and would sort of ruin the effect. So yeah, water it down and apply multiple coats, leaving a good 10 or so minutes in between each coat, because it does take a while to dry. to darken down some of the silver areas around the gun, I'm using the Citadel Contrast Black Templar, and again a few drops of water just to thin it down a little bit, and I'm applying this over just some of the areas of the metal on the guns, just to darken them down a little bit, make them a bit different. Again, the box art shows these quite dark. Again, if you were using Nuln Oil, you could just add a few more layers of Nuln Oil to this, or you could paint them black and do a edge highlight of your silver colours just to make it look like they were silver. But the Black Templar contrast, it's a fantastic one just to really instantly darken it down. It's almost like a very thick Nuln Oil, very thick wash. Okay, once all of your shading is done, again a couple of layers of the purple top and bottom you can see there, and a couple of layers of the Black Templar. It's really altered the look and feel of the model. We're now going to do the bronze, so we're going to go with a layer of Sycorax bronze from Citadel. This is quite a thin paint, quite a thin layer paint, but because we're going straight over the silver, it actually covers very well. And if it is a bit too thin, it doesn't matter, because we're going for a sort of quite washed out look to our metallics. Because we've already done a lot of the pre-shading, there's already a lot of depth there, so we're sort of just colouring in the areas now, making sure to leave some of those dark bits in the recesses. We will be applying a wash over this colour, but for now just go around and paint in anything you want to be bronze with the Sycorax bronze. Now if you wanted to go for a dark one, you would start with a layer of brass scorpion and then highlight with Sycorax bronze, but I wanted a sort of bright washed out brass for this model, so that's why we started with the Sycorax bronze straight away. There are a lot of photos at the end showing what I've painted as brass, but it's really the area around his chest, the trim of the armour, his head and a bit on his back. So once that's done, we go back to our Druchii Violet wash. The reason I'm doing this separate from the main wash is because I just wanted a bit more control over it. It's best to just do them individually and not try and put too much of this on at once. If you do them in sort of sections, do the silver bit first and the bronze work, you get a bit more control over where the paint's going to be. And what I'm doing is I'm just applying it to the darkest areas where I expect the shadows to be. It's almost doing some liner work, filling in the deepest recesses with this Druchii Violet wash, some areas around his head, just filling in some of the shadows and recessed areas, also picking out any rivets with this, so not wholly washing over it. Again, look, if I've applied a bit too much there, but just empty your brush of paint and go back and fill it back, put some more on. Yeah, so any rivet marks, just go over them with Druchii Violet, and because it's watered down, it will naturally just pull itself around the recesses of the rivets. So apply as little or as much as this if you wanted. If you don't want to use the purple, then sort of Reikland Flesh Shade or Nuln Oil or Arax Earth Shade, any of those washes will be good here. You could make a wash from the Tenebrous Grey as well, to have a nice very very dark purple, but Druchii Violet is a very versatile colour as long as you water it down. Once those washes are dry, again 10 or 15 minutes, back to the Stormhost Silver, and now I'm just going to be applying some small touch dot highlights on the bronze. So just catching the edges where I expect it to be either worn out or catching most of the light. This is obviously by preference of how you modelled it and where you expect your lighting to be coming from on your model. Obviously we're going to be doing a lot of bright points on this with the fluorescent green, but I'm just applying the highlights to where I just wanted them to catch. also to show that there's a bit of wear and tear. So the silver is not just a highlight, it's to show that the bronze is worn through to some silver that's underneath. Believe it or not, that is a huge part of the model now done. We're actually moving now onto the smoke effects, which there are a lot of on this model. Citadel have done a great job in creating the smoke for this. So with some AK Intense White, I'm now painting in all of the smoke and flames, which is all through his neck, down his back, coming out of his guns, and on his chest plate front and back as well. Also his eyes and his nostrils inside of the guns, and his little eyes on his sort of chest plate. So yeah, take your time, try not to hit any of the metallics that you've done, and just 2 or 3 coats of your white to cover up all of the smoke. It takes a bit of time, but the effects you're going to get is well worth this step. As if by magic. Took about 15 minutes, a couple of coats, and then left it to dry, and we have all of our mystical smoke areas and flame areas all base coated. So we're going to move to the airbrush. First colour we're going to put through the airbrush is some Vallejo White Ink, straight through. And what we're doing here is, the best way for me to explain it is, we're haloing the white that we've done. So imagine that the white is the light that's coming from it. So bright white means it's hot. So now we're creating the reflective light that's around it. So if you have a torch, you have your main beam of light, and of course it halos itself out. So your bright point's in the middle, then your gradients are all around it, and that's what your airbrush does. So the center point where you hit will be brightest white, and then it will naturally gradient out back to your base coat colors with just a few sprays of the airbrush of the trigger. So what I'm doing is I'm pointing the airbrush, the nozzle, directly into where we've painted white, so that you then halo the outlines around all of the flaming areas. So the bright points are like inside of his chest, the eyes, inside of the sort of neck areas, and the base of the smoke coming out of his arms. You can see and always point the airbrush into the direction you want the gradients to be. So if we pointed upwards there, it wouldn't have worked. We're pointing downwards because that's where the light is going to be coming from. It's going to be going downwards and leaving some of the green reflections on the gun. So all of this is in preparation for applying the fluorescent paints. The fluorescent paints work beautifully over white. So once that's done, go and clean your airbrush out, clean it out nicely and fully, and then grab some AK fluorescent green, or you could use the green stuff, world fluorescent green. I just have a lot of the AK fluorescent green, and then water it down with a few drops of water, or if you've got fluorescent green ink, water it down with a few drops of fluorescent green ink. But either way, you need to thin it a little bit because it is quite thick to airbrush and you'll get a lot of spotting. And now with short sharp bursts we just cover all of that white with the fluorescent green. Take your time, don't rush this. A few coats is better than one thick coat. One thick coat will look hideous. It will pull, it will run, it will spider web. It will not look good. So a few coats, short sharp bursts with the trigger, and now just cover all of the white that we've just done, making sure not to get too much overspray on the surrounding areas, just to cover the white. And you can do that either by using the nozzle and only, pointing it towards the white areas, down and up, it just dependent on your angles. You could use modelling putty to cover some of those areas, but just some soft control and pointing the airbrush like you did with the white, using those same directional moves. Some overspray is okay here, but what you don't want to do is get overspray on areas that would be in shadow. So just take your time and just cover all of the green, all of the white with the fluorescent green. You can see already the camera's having trouble picking it up. It's so bright, it blacks it back to white. when I turn off the lights, you can see it just, you can see that natural green coming through. So there it is with a couple of coats. It's been 10 or 15 minutes. I've let it dry because we're going to be dry brushing now, so it needs to be fully dry. Don't try and dry brush when it's still wet. It will destroy a lot of your work. So 10-15 minutes, even longer if you can. So the first colour we're going to use to dry brush is AK Black Green, which is Caliban Green from the Citadel range. So there's our big size 11 dry brush, and now we're just dry brushing in our dark areas, which is cold. So the bright areas is hot, dark is cold. In this model obviously it's green, so the bright areas of green are our more mystical areas, and the dark areas is where that magic is fading away into dark smoke. But the principles are the same. Dark is cold, light is hot. So just dry brush in now, making sure you catch all those raised areas, define your shapes, leaving, like in his chest area here, the bright green in the heart of his chest. On the smoke, we want dark at the top, light at the bottom, so dry brush downwards from top to bottom on the smoke, and the same with the smoke on his neck, and the same principles on his chest, on this sort of like back armour there, where it's hot in the middle, cold on the outsides. I don't stop the camera here, so just follow along to how I'm dry brushing it, and you'll get the same outcomes with the black green. Once that's done, don't worry about cleaning out your dry brush, just move back to our Tenebrous Grey or your Corvus Black or Abaddon Black, and straight onto the dry brush, and we're following the same principles we've just done, but hardly any now on some of the chest and back areas, and only focus this on the tips of the smoke where you want it to be darker, where it's completely fading away, and on the top of the smoke clouds coming from his arms, again top to bottom, so that it's cold to hot, dark to light. So one final stage to just make some of that green really pop. We're going to put some yellow in there, but before that we're going to use our magic pot of white contrast that we can create. So this is a mixture of Vallejo White Ink, contrast medium and water. It's 1 part ink to 2 parts water to 1 part medium, and I've just mixed it up in a big pot, one of the contrast medium pots. So I've got a nice pot of it. Put a couple of ball bearings in the bottom so you can shake it all up, just to save me having to make it all the time, so I use this a lot. You could just water down some white, but I find this medium mix really helps the ink flow. So all I'm doing here is applying the white in the areas that I want to be brightest, so in the heart of his chest plate, in the bottom parts of the smoke on his arms where it meets the vents, and some points in his back area where it meets his back armour, and then some of the deeper parts on his back. A couple of coats of this will be fine. Don't put too many, don't want too many highlights, because then they're not highlights. A few subtle highlights really sells what we're trying to achieve here, by creating the extreme bright points or extreme hot points. With some pure white off screen, I'm just going to pick out again the whites of the eyes, so there's quite defined, so a couple of dots on his eyes, on his head and on his chest plate, and add a little bit of the white in his nostrils like I did earlier. whilst we're waiting for that white ink to dry, we can just go ahead and do some edge highlighting with some green. But before we do that, what I'm doing is, like our principles we've done with the airbrush, with all that white and green, I'm going to apply some edge highlighting of just using pure white, just to pick out the areas that I would be expecting to reflect that green. So some bounce reflections, some bounce highlights. So some little bits around his chest plate, a few bits on his legs, pick out a couple of rivets here and there, just areas that you want to just show reflecting the green because they're metallic. Again, adds a bit more contrast, a bit more definition, a bit more realism if we want to go that far. Especially little bits around the eyes, just to show that the glowing effect is bouncing back off of some of those metal areas. Thin lines, again, not too much. And then once it's dry, that white, the white for your edge highlighting, just edge highlight using the fluorescent green from 8K that we use through the airbrush. by the time you've done that, your white ink should be dry now that we've done in the recesses. So grab some AK Fluorescent Yellow, or Green Stuff World Fluorescent Yellow is just as good, and just apply some of this straight from the brush, quite thick, and cover the little dots on his eyes, and then cover all of the white that you've applied in your recesses. You can overlap it a little bit on the green, sort of blend it in, go from green to the white, and then this will give us a really nice, really bright heart of magic to our green. So we go from bright yellow. Now the yellow over the green almost gives you a sort of lime green effect. It doesn't really look yellow, it just looks like another shade of green, like brighter shade. So we've got our nice hot points up to our dark cold points. And at this stage, if you're not wanting to do the rest of the base like we've done it, the model's complete. You can just base him as normal and off you go. A fantastic looking model to roam the battlefields. But if you're going to be doing the base, then keep watching. Principles are the same as what we've just done actually, but just applied in a slightly different way, but not too different. So the base has been base coated in the Tenebrous Grey, and now I'm going to grab some white ink straight through the airbrush and just highlight our mystical lava. So all of it gets a coverage of white, but then I increase the volume of white, so I just apply more white in the areas I want to be hot, leaving the not so intense white as the sort of darker areas, and then overlapping some of the green over onto the base itself. So like you see with lava, where the orange redness is overflowing onto the rocks around it, the light of it is bouncing back. We're doing the same, but it's just green. But the principles all start the same, where the white, the bright white is our bright points, and the not so intense white is our darker points. Try and apply, like you saw there, as if the airbrush is the flow of the effect. So do little lines with it, little splodges, so where that gel mix has created some of those raised areas, inside of those raised areas just put a bit more of the white so it's a bit more intense, so there's little pools of the magic green glow. And once that's done, off your wobble and clean your airbrush, and then we are going to once again grab our AK fluorescent green, watered down ever so slightly with either fluorescent ink or a little bit of water, and just apply the green all over the white, making sure you catch the overs on the tops of the base as well. Once that's set aside to dry, again it takes 10 or 15 minutes, we're just going to grab our model, and because I wanted to just do some bounce back highlights, some object source lighting, trying to work out where it's going to hit his legs. So as you can see there, it's going to hit his inside of his right leg and the outside of his left leg. So to do this, I'm using some dark green and some deep green. So Greenskin Punch by AK and Deep Green by AK. And the Greenskin Punch I end up just watering down a little bit once I've applied this first bit, almost like a thick wash. And I'm just applying this, I'm me grabbing the water now just to water it down a bit. It's probably a 50-50 mix. And we're just going to apply this just on a few areas, just to show that the lava is, or the magic lava, is just reflecting back off some of the armour. Once the Greenskin Punch is dry, I then add a smaller highlight with the deep green, and then an edge highlight in white, and then go over it with the fluorescent green to show the edge highlighting. So you would sort of use Caliban green, moot green, and then fluorescent green if you were using the Citadel range. So Caliban green and moot green from the Citadel range is your dark green and light green. Right, so back to the base, it's dried now, so grab our little white ink wash, and same principles as we did on the smoke and flame effects on the main model. Just apply some small bits of this onto the base where you want it to be its most brightest, its most intense, where there's little pools that have been created by your mediums or whatever texture you've used. Then fill this in with the white, and then once it's dry, go over those areas with the yellow fluorescent paint as we did previously. One final stage for the base is just to apply some highlights to the rock, which I got some light earth colour from AK, so AK light earth, which would be Ushabti bone or Sandry dust from GW, mixed in with a little bit of the Tenebrous Grey just to make it a slightly darker. And I'm just edge highlighting with a dry brush all of the surrounding areas, and then with pure Tenebrous Grey I'll just darken down ever so slightly the central points of the base itself, just to reduce some of that green, and then apply some of that Tenebrous Grey over the actual magic lava itself as we did before, just to darken down the tips so that the top parts of the sort of texture are the coldest parts, with the yellow parts being the brightest. Once you've done that, just use some super glue to attach your model to the base. And I then applied some Game of Grass Tufts, the alien ones they've got, and then painted the base with War Painter's matte black. And there he is. We've got some really good purple effect armour, some washed out bronze, some amazing looking fluorescent magical fire coming from him, and some emanating from his base, all done pretty much in real time in about 2 hours, or maybe even an hour and a half. So yeah, thanks for watching. You can use this method across all of your Chaos Dwarf range and any other miniatures. The principles are always the same. If you've got any comments, add them in and tag me. Please remember to like and subscribe, and just click that notifications button for any future free tutorials that come out. And as always, happy painting!